Welcome back to the Fantasy Price Check. Today we're going to be talking about whether you should be drafting Alvin Kamara with the 4th overall pick. If this is your first time here, let me tell you what we do. We grade player ADPs based on whether they are overpriced, underpriced, or fairly priced, and today we're talking about Alvin Kamara. Before we get into Alvin Kamara, I need to ask you guys for a favor. Hit that subscribe button down below to help keep this channel growing. Let's get into Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is currently the 4th running back being drafted off the board. He's currently being drafted after Ezekiel Elliott and ahead of Dalvin Cook. Should Alvin Kamara be drafted with the 104 after a somewhat down year, or should you pivot to Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry? That's what we're going to be breaking down in this video. In our last price check, I broke down Dalvin Cook, and I gave Dalvin Cook the nod over Alvin Kamara based on the fact that Dalvin Cook should see more volume than Alvin Kamara and will get more opportunities inside the 5-yard line. Let's see if that's the right call, or if I should move Alvin Kamara over Dalvin Cook in my rankings. Dalvin Cook should be a player that gets about 250 carries and 60 receptions, and Alvin Kamara should be a player that gets about 200 carries and 80 receptions. Last year, Alvin Kamara had a down year compared to expectations. He was drafted as the RB3 and finished as the RB12. And that's because he missed 2 games after suffering a leg injury in week 6. Not many details of the injury were known until Alvin Kamara came out recently and described the severity of the injury. Many people thought that Alvin Kamara was just dealing with a high ankle sprain, but he recently came out and said that he tore up his knee. The injury that Alvin Kamara suffered was actually a torn MCL, which players are actually able to come back from after just a few weeks of rest. This past offseason, Alvin Kamara opted to rehab the injury instead of undergoing surgery and says that he's now 100%. If you watched Alvin Kamara last year, you knew that something didn't look right. In a recent interview, Alvin Kamara said that he didn't trust the stability of his knee, and he would just take the yards that he could get and go down instead of making an extra cut and picking up extra yards. And it was apparent in Alvin Kamara's game. During the first 5 games, he had 26 broken tackles, and then in his last 9 games, he had just 13 broken tackles. Despite missing 2 games and playing on an injured knee, Alvin Kamara still had over 1,300 total yards. Had Alvin Kamara played in the full 16 games, he was on pace for over 1,500 total yards, which is what he put up during his first 2 seasons. Despite playing through this injury, Alvin Kamara was still a top 10 running back in points per game. In half-point PPR leagues, Alvin Kamara was the RB9 in points per game. And during his first 2 seasons, Alvin Kamara was the RB3 in his rookie year and the RB4 in his second year. Another reason for the down year for Kamara last year was the touchdowns. Alvin Kamara had just 6 touchdowns last year after putting up 18 touchdowns in the year before and then 13 touchdowns in his rookie season. It's likely that the Saints didn't want to give Alvin Kamara the ball inside the 10-yard line last year because of the injury that he was dealing with. Now that Alvin Kamara is 100%, I would expect his touchdowns to bounce back to double digits. I also expect Alvin Kamara to get back to 1,500 plus total yards with a full 16 games. If we get 16 games from Alvin Kamara, I would expect 200 carries for 900 plus rushing yards, along with 80 plus receptions for 700 to 800 receiving yards. Alvin Kamara has had roughly 100 targets and 80 receptions in each of the last 3 years. Alvin Kamara played in 9 games after suffering a torn MCL and still gained over 1,300 total yards. Imagine what he'll be able to do when he's 100%. If we assume that we're getting 16 healthy games from Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara, I'm expecting Dalvin Cook to push for 1,900 total yards while Alvin Kamara pushes for 1,700 total yards. I'm still sticking with Dalvin Cook at the 104, but it's super close between these guys. If you're drafting Alvin Kamara over Dalvin Cook, hit me up with your reasons other than health in the comments. After Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara, I put Derrick Henry right behind those guys, and that's just because he doesn't offer much in the receiving game. I want my first round running back to have elite pass catching skills, which both Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook possess. Alvin Kamara is fairly priced. Expect a return to top 5 numbers. I would draft him with the 4th or 5th overall pick. Guys, if you enjoyed this price check, give it a thumbs up. I got 2 more for you. I'm going to throw up the price checks for Dalvin Cook and Josh Jacobs, so be sure to check those out. And don't forget to subscribe below. I'll see you guys on the next one.